So hello and welcome to the continued coverage of the walkthrough series, and in this episode we are looking at the 9618 variant 41 of October and November 2023. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the Python implementation for number one. So we have the question here which says this iterative pseudocode algorithm for the function iterative vowels takes a string as a parameter and counts the number of lowercase vowels in this string. The vowels are the letters A, E, I, O, and U, right? So we just given a little refresher of what vowels are. Then there's the function pseudocode there. So we are to implement this function that is for a item one. We have to implement this function called iterative vowels. So let's actually go ahead and look at how we can go about it in Python. So of course, obviously we have the function definition, and what I'm using in this case, in this particular example, right there, it's something called parameter hints, right? Because if you come back to this, you see that it says here that the value that is the identifier is of type string. So we are using parameter hints. This is somewhat a new feature in Python. It was introduced in Python 3.5 and later, is it? And it's optional. You actually don't really need it, but I just thought maybe I could show you a function, rather parameter hints as it were, in Python and how they are used, so that you won't have any, so that you won't have to worry sometimes about having to use comments to describe what your function returns and what it does. So it's a parameter type int, so it's going to int that it's the value that you're going to pass is a string. Then this arrow, it's a hyphen and a angled bracket, right angled bracket. It simply suggests that this function is going to return an integer. So that's a good practice for you to use parameter type hints as well as parameter return types as it were. So we have total. We are initializing the total to 0. Then we are simply checking the length of the string that has been passed as an argument, and we are storing that inside of the length string variable there. Then we are using a for loop, right? What we have going on there, that underscore, that's another technique that I want to show you. So there are some instances whereby you don't need to create a variable that is a name, is it? So you can just use that underscore right there, because it's a throwaway variable. So you don't really need have to think of a variable name. You can just use the underscore as it were. So Python will know that it's just a throwaway variable. So you don't really need to worry about thinking of a name. Then we are just iterating for a particular character in the range of the length of the string. We want to take the first character that is at index position 0. Then check to see if the first character is inside of these vowels set right here, is it? So if it is inside of here, then we are simply going to increment the show by 1, because we have found one variable, one vowel as it were. Then if it is not, then we are just going to move on and return, rather slice the string as it were. So this notation that I'm using right here, let me actually just come here, open up IDo, then show you what I have, what this does. So you see that we have a variable called device and its computer, right? Then if we print device box brackets, then 1, then colon, then another box bracket right there, it's going to slice this C and give us the computer part right there. So that's what's happening right here. So essentially we're just slicing the value by 1 and storing the value. Let's say if it was computer, now we have computer, as you've seen either there. So we are now storing that as the new value. Then it's going to repeat the next time around with computer. Then it's going to inspect to see if O is a variable. Then it's going to implement total and continue slicing and so forth and so on. So that's what's going to happen until we have nothing to slice, is it? Until our string is now as a length of 0, then we simply exit out of the loop and return the total there. So that's the iterative vowels implementation in Python. Then of course you see that this is more or less the same thing that we have going on in the pseudocode, right? So for the loop, this is the loop right there. Then the first character setting it to taking the first character and storing it as the first character, right? Of course, you don't have the mid function in Python, so you would need to know how you can handle such situations, like in language specific techniques, as it were. Right, so yeah, that would be it for the iterative vowels function. Then our next task is to write program code to call the function iterative vowels with the parameter house from the main program. So let me scroll all the way down to the main program. So this is where we have that going on. So we are calling iterative vowels with house and storing the iterative count inside of that variable there. Then we simply print the iterative count, as it were. Then we are to test our program. So let's just go ahead and click on the play button, and we should see our vowel count is 3, right? So this is for the iterative count variable. So you go ahead and copy, rather take a screenshot of this and paste it inside of the evidence document. Then moving on to the next aspect or the next part of the question, we have part B. We are to write an iterative function, we are to create a recursive function that more or less resembles or does the same thing as the iterative vowels function, as it were. And for that, we are going to be given 6 marks. Now, recursion, it's a bit confusing for a lot of people, but you just need to remember that recursion really relies on 2 things. By the way, there is a video that I cover recursion for this particular course. You can check it out. It's here on my channel. You can always check that out. Check it out on your own time. But for this particular question, let me just quickly explain how recursion works. So you have the base case, right, whereby you are going to return or exit out of your recursive function should a certain condition be met. So in this case, the base case is sort of like the exit condition. So we are simply going to return or exit out of this recursive function if there's nothing inside of value, right? If essentially the length of the string, because remember, value is a string that we are going to pass at runtime, is it? So if there's nothing, we are simply saying that if there's nothing, if the length of value is 0, we are simply going to return 0, as it were. Then we also need, so that's the base case, right? So base case, think of it as the exit strategy. Then the second thing that you need for a recursive function is a way to work towards the base case. That is a way to work towards the exit strategy. It's more like walking towards the exit in a building. Is it? You cannot exit a building without walking towards the exit, as it were. So that's the same with recursive functions. You need a way that gets you closer to the base case, or that gets you closer to the exit, as it were. So on lines 18 and 19, that's where we have that going on. So you see that we are taking the first character index position 0. Then what we are doing now is we are focusing on the right hand side right here. Right, we are going to set count to 1. Right, if the first character is inside of this set right there. Otherwise, we are simply going to set count to 0. So this is what we are simply doing. I would have written this using an if statement, an if else clause, as it were, but I just went about it this shorthand way. Right, so again, remember how you can read this is we are setting count to 1 if the first character is inside of this. Otherwise, count is going to be set to 0. Right? So that's what we're simply doing on line 19 there. So that's how we are going to actually work towards the exit, as it were, or work towards the base case. So those are the 2 conditions you need for writing recursive functions: the base case and the way to work towards the base case, so that eventually you can exit outside of the recursive function. Then on line 21, we are going to return the value of count plus the recursive. Now we are calling the recursive vowels function, but this time around, I'm sure you saw how the value, how this notation works in Python. Like for instance, if we had the word value, is it when we slice, when we output it like this, it means that you are going to get rid of the v, and now you just have the a, l, u, and so forth. Is it? So that's how that works. So we are now calling recursive, but with a shorter string, and it's going to execute this code again and update the value of count if need be. Then it comes back with an even shorter string. So it's going to keep doing that until eventually there's nothing inside of value, which is the base case, and it's going to exit out of the recursive function. So of course you'd go ahead and copy this code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Then we need to call recursive vowels inside of the main method and pass imagine as an argument to that. Then after which we are going to run our program and take a screenshot of it. So let's come down to the main method here. Then I'm just going to hit the play button. Again, I think you saw this earlier on when we ran the program, is it that we were getting 4. And just as before, we are still getting 4 because there are 4 vowels inside of the imagine word right there. So With that being said, you go ahead and copy this, rather take a screenshot of this output and paste it inside of the evidence document. Yeah, so as it happens, this is the end of question 1. I'll see you in the implementation for question 2.